With President Obama wrapping up his final trip to Asia, it's a good time to review his policy, his foreign policy, specifically the Asian pivot, also known as the rebalance to Asia. I believe this is probably his smartest move in terms of foreign policy, during his entire administration. Now, if we look at foreign policy before Obama took office, we see sort of what we could call a war of civilizations going on, a civilizational war, in which the U.S. and the Western countries try to move the non-Western countries toward more democratic values, Western values of government and society. Now, there'll be people who will deny that this happened, but if you look at the actions and the rhetoric over the last few decades, it's pretty clear, starting with about the first President Bush, that this has been the way policy has been going. And it's been particularly focused, frankly, on the Islamic world. But if we look at the results, we can see that it's been counterproductive. Actually, the Muslim world has gone in the reverse direction, more toward a fundamentalist, a strict view of Islam. And, if I look back to the 1980s, I couldn't imagine countries like Turkey or Malaysia going in that direction. But that's what's occurred. And it's, I think, basically a reaction to the growing amount of military intervention that's been happening in the Muslim world. But getting back to the Asian pivot, all of the major economists, or the great majority of them, agree that in the next century, the Asia-Pacific region is going to be growing faster than any other region in the world. There are a lot of reasons for that. There's demographics in the southern part of Asia. There's the fact that you have this expanding middle class, a young middle class. And, there's just a lot of room for economic growth. People are getting more educated. So when we look at foreign policy, the priorities in foreign policy would be, number one, national security, and connected to that is the economy, in terms of economic security, in terms of access to other countries, to the world seas. All of that is interconnected, and the region in the world is going to be the most important in the future would be the Asia-Pacific region. So that's one reason that the Asian pivot is very important at this time. That's not to say that the other parts of the world are unimportant, but even if we look at national security, even in relation to something like terrorism, terrorism is Islamic or jihadist type terrorism. It's spreading into Asia. The San Bernardino attacks, for example, were carried out by people from South Asia. And extremism is spreading rapidly throughout that area, Central Asia, Southeast Asia, South Asia. But in the bigger sense, you also have to look at nations like China and Russia and how they're moving in the Pacific and the Asian region. And you can't just ignore that type of thing. Even if we look at something like the TPP, a lot of people on the left, and on the far left, and on the far right are resistant to the TPP. But what that does is it just regulates what's already going on. The interlinks in the world today. The world is a much smaller place. You can't just cut off these nations and build walls and cut off trade. It's not going to happen. You would have something far worse than the Great Depression. So the TPP simply regulates what already exists. It gives us a framework by which we can have fairer trade. Now, even though they won't admit, a lot of the opponents of TPP, they're really against free trade. They have almost a conspiracy idea of what trade is, trade, commerce, international commerce. It's just not realistic. It's not going to happen that we're going to create this,
but I will try some later.
that we're going to destroy all the links in the world today.
Of you here today, and
So,
especially the young people of Laos, we see the diversity
whether it's the
that is the strength of this
TPP
nation.
or the pivot to Asia,
Lao and
it's just a
Khamur
smart move
and Hmong,
looking forward into
tapestry
the
of proud
future.
ethnic groups and
And
indigenous
again, I think
peoples.
it's one of the best moves
So
in
you
terms
are
of foreign
truly a people of the
policy
heart, and I thank
that
you
President
for
Obama has
welcoming
made.
me with such